Take him away! That boy is an embarrassment to my name!
He rejected his own son because he wasn't perfect, but the child he threw away would become the one he needed most. Rain hammered violently against the mansion roof as thunder rolled through the night, rattling the tall glass windows and echoing through the grand hallway where a small boy stood frozen, clutching a worn suitcase with trembling hands. His shirt clung to his body, slightly damp with sweat and fear, his breathing uneven as the tension in the room pressed down on him like something heavy and suffocating. Behind him, his father's voice exploded like a crack of lightning. "Take him away. That boy is a disgrace to my name." Ethan flinched, his fingers tightening around the suitcase handle as though it were the only thing holding him together. He didn't move, didn't run, didn't cry. "Not yet. I didn't do anything wrong," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. His stepmother let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Look at him. Even standing there ruins the image of this family. How embarrassing." Ethan lowered his head, his cheeks burning. Just a few steps away, Daniel stood tall in a perfectly fitted suit, his posture straight, his expression calm and composed. Guests had been praising him all evening. Perfect smile, perfect posture, perfect son. His father stepped forward and placed a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder, pride shining openly in his eyes. "This," he said loudly, as though still addressing an invisible audience, "is my pride." A pause followed. Slowly, his gaze shifted toward Ethan. "And that is a mistake." The words didn't just sting, they sank deep, settling somewhere inside Ethan where something fragile finally cracked. From the distant hall, music continued to play. Laughter carried on as if nothing was wrong, as if a boy wasn't being quietly destroyed just a few rooms away. His father turned his back on him. "Get him out of my sight." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. The door opened, then slammed shut, and just like that, Ethan was no longer part of that world. Rain swallowed him the moment he stepped outside. Cold drops soaked through his clothes in seconds, clinging to his skin, chilling him to the bone. He stood there for a moment, stunned, as if waiting for someone to call him back. When no voice came, he turned slowly and knocked weakly on the door. "Please, I'll do better. I promise." Nothing. Inside, music continued. Laughter continued. Life continued. Without him, a soft voice broke through the rain behind him. "You'll get sick out here." Ethan turned slowly, blinking through the water streaming down his face. The maid stood there, holding an umbrella slightly above him. "I'm not allowed inside," he said quietly. She looked toward the glowing mansion, then back at him. "Then don't go back." He stared at her, confused. "I have nowhere else to go." She hesitated for only a moment before speaking again. "Then come with me." That moment changed everything. Her home was small, simple, and quiet. There were no marble floors, no grand chandeliers, no echoes of pride or shame bouncing off the walls. Just warmth. Just stillness. She placed a plate of food in front of him. "Eat." Ethan stared at it, but didn't move. "I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten all day." "I'm used to it." She sat down beside him. "You shouldn't be." He looked down at his hands. "Why are you kind to me?" "Because someone should be." The room fell into silence, but it was a different kind of silence than the one he had left behind. This one didn't hurt. Outside, the rain continued falling. Inside, something new quietly began. Days passed, then weeks, then months. At first, Ethan barely spoke. He moved through each day like someone trying not to be noticed. But slowly, something shifted. He began to read, then to learn, then to try. He failed often, but every time he did, she said the same thing. Again, and when he wanted to give up, she said it again, until slowly, he began to believe it. One night, he sat outside under the dim glow of a flickering light, staring at his hands. "I don't think I'm good enough," he said quietly. She didn't hesitate. "Then become good enough." "That's not how it works. It is if you refuse to stop." He looked at her, searching her face. "Why do you believe in me?" She smiled softly. "Because you haven't given me a reason not to." That night, he didn't sleep. He worked. Years passed. The boy who once stood shaking in the rain became someone different. Not overnight. Not easily. But steadily. A scholarship application sat in front of him one afternoon, the paper almost trembling in his hands. "What if I fail?" he asked. She leaned forward slightly. "Then you fail forward." He frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It will when you succeed." He took a deep breath and signed. The interview room was silent as judges flipped through his designs. "This is exceptional," one of them said slowly. "Where did you train?" another asked. Ethan paused. "Nowhere." They exchanged looks. "You built all this alone?" "Yes." A long pause followed. Then the words came. "You're accepted. Full scholarship." Ethan froze, blinking as if he hadn't heard correctly. "What?" "Full scholarship," the man repeated with a faint smile. For the first time in years. Ethan smiled too. Far away, in the mansion he once called home, something began to feel off. "Any sign of him?" his father asked one evening. "No," the assistant replied. "He's completely disappeared." Daniel shrugged from across the room. "He's irrelevant anyway." But for some reason, that answer didn't sit well anymore. Something about the silence left behind felt heavier than before. Time moved on. Ethan grew, learned, built, until one day, he stood on a stage beneath bright lights, his name echoing across a massive hall. The youngest innovator in modern engineering. Applause erupted. He stood calm, confident, unrecognizable. In the audience, a man froze. His father. Beside him, Daniel leaned forward. "That's him." Shock hit them both at the same time. Because the boy they threw away was now the man the world admired. Backstage, tension hung thick in the air as his father approached him. "Ethan." He turned slowly. No emotion, no warmth, just distance. "I didn't know it was you," his father said quickly. "I'm sorry." Ethan looked at him for a long moment. "You didn't know, because you never looked." His father swallowed. "I made mistakes. You made choices. I want to fix this." Ethan shook his head slightly. "You don't fix what you refuse to see." Silence stretched between them. "I'm still your father." Ethan paused, then said quietly, "No." The word cut deeper than anything else. "You stopped being that the day you threw me away." His father's voice broke. "Please, give me a chance." Ethan exhaled slowly. "I begged you once." Silence. "You didn't listen." He turned to leave. And this time, he didn't stop. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe and like this story. Years passed after that encounter, but for the first time in his life, Ethan was no longer running from anything. He moved forward with purpose, building a name that no longer needed validation from anyone who had once doubted him. His work spoke louder than his past, and his presence commanded respect in rooms that once would have rejected him without a second glance. But far away, inside the quiet walls of the mansion, time did not move the same way. The house that once echoed with laughter and pride had grown unusually silent. The grand dining table sat untouched most evenings, the chairs neatly aligned as if waiting for something that never came. His father sat at the head of that table more often now, staring at nothing in particular, his thoughts louder than any noise that used to fill the space. Daniel still lived there, still carried himself with that same effortless confidence, but something had shifted. The admiration that once followed him had begun to thin. His achievements were no longer impressive enough. His charm felt rehearsed, and without realizing it, he had begun to rely more and more on the foundation his father had built for him, rather than creating anything of his own. One evening, as documents were spread across the table, his father leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "It's time," he said quietly. Daniel looked up from his phone. "Time for what?" "To finalize the will." Daniel's expression brightened slightly. "About time." His father studied him for a moment. There was something different in his gaze now, something uncertain, something that hadn't been there before. "I want everything to be properly documented," he continued. "No confusion, no disputes later." Daniel shrugged. "There won't be. I'm your only real successor." The words hung in the air longer than expected. For a brief moment, something flickered across his father's face. A hesitation. A thought he didn't immediately voice. Later that night, alone in his study, he sat staring at an old photograph. Two boys stood side by side, one smiling confidently, the other trying. His grip tightened slightly on the frame. "I only have one son," he whispered, recalling his own words from years ago. But for the first time, they didn't sound as certain. A quiet knock came at the door. "Sir," his assistant said, stepping in. "The legal team is ready to proceed with the documentation." He nodded slowly. "There's one more thing I want done first." The assistant waited. "A DNA test." There was a pause. "Sir, I want confirmation," he said firmly, "before I transfer everything." The assistant hesitated but nodded. "Understood." The process was quiet, discreet. No one else was meant to know. Days passed. Then the results arrived. He sat alone when he opened them. At first, he didn't understand what he was looking at. Then he read it again. And again. His hands slowly began to shake. No, he whispered. The paper slipped slightly between his fingers. It was clear. Undeniable. Daniel was not his son. The room felt like it had tilted. Every sound disappeared. Every certainty he had ever held collapsed in a single moment. Memories flashed through his mind. Years of pride. Years of investment. Years of choosing one child over another without hesitation. And then, another realization followed. If Daniel wasn't his son, then Ethan was. The breath left his body as the truth settled in. The boy he rejected, the boy he called a mistake, the boy he threw out into the rain, was the only one who had ever truly been his. A sharp crash echoed through the room as he stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "Get them in here," he said, his voice shaking with something between anger and disbelief. Minutes later, Daniel and his mother stood in front of him. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone cautious. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he held up the paper. "What is this?" he demanded. Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Answer me," his father shouted, louder than he had in years. The room went still. His stepmother's eyes flickered as she glanced at the document. And in that brief moment, everything was exposed. "You knew," he said slowly. Silence. "You knew." "It's not what you think," she started. "Then explain it," he roared. Daniel stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. Some test doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," his father snapped. His voice cracked as he continued. "All these years, everything I built, everything I gave you." His eyes shifted toward Daniel. "You're not even mine." The words landed heavily. Daniel's expression hardened. "So what? I'm still the one who stayed. I'm still the one who—" "Enough." The single word cut through the room like a blade. His father's chest rose and fell rapidly as the weight of reality crushed down on him. "Get out." The room went silent. "What?" the stepmother whispered. "Get out," he repeated, louder this time. "You can't be serious. Everything you have here is because of me," he said coldly. "And I built it for my family." His gaze hardened. "You're not my family." Daniel stared at him, disbelief turning into anger. "You're making a mistake." His father let out a hollow laugh. "No," he said quietly. "I already made that mistake years ago." The words carried a different kind of pain now. Security was called. Voices rose. Arguments broke out. But in the end, they were gone. Just like that. The mansion fell silent again. But this time, the silence was unbearable. He stood alone in the center of the room, staring at the empty space where they had just been. Then slowly, his knees gave way. He sank into the chair, covering his face with his hands. "What have I done?" he whispered. For the first time in his life, there was no one left to answer him. Days turned into weeks. The house felt larger now, colder. Every room echoed with memories he could no longer ignore. Ethan's old room remained untouched. He stepped inside one evening, looking around at the emptiness. A faint memory lingered there, of a boy who once waited to be acknowledged, who once hoped to be chosen. "I threw him away," he said softly. The realization didn't just hurt. It consumed him. He picked up the phone. "Find him," he said. No hesitation this time. No pride. No delay. "Find my son." Finding Ethan was not as simple as he had imagined. For years, the man had believed that money could solve anything, that influence could open any door, that power could bend reality in his favor. But this time, none of it worked the way it used to. There were no clear records, no easy trails, no obvious path leading back to the boy he had discarded like something worthless. "Sir, we've searched multiple databases," his assistant said one afternoon, standing carefully at the doorway. "He's not using his old name in any official capacity. It's as if he erased himself." He closed his eyes slowly. No, Ethan hadn't erased himself. He had simply rebuilt himself somewhere beyond reach. "Keep looking," he said, his voice quieter now, stripped of its old authority. "Expand the search. Universities, tech firms, international conferences, anywhere." "Yes, sir." Days stretched into weeks, weeks into months. Every morning felt heavier than the last. The mansion no longer felt like a symbol of success. It felt like a monument to a mistake he could never undo. He stopped hosting guests, stopped attending social events. Even the business empire he once controlled with sharp precision began to slip through his fingers. Meetings were missed, decisions delayed, opportunities lost. People noticed. They whispered. But for once, he didn't care. because every quiet moment dragged him back to the same memory. A small boy, standing in the rain, begging to be let back inside. I'll be better. I promise. He pressed his hands against his face, his breathing uneven. I should have listened, he whispered into the empty room. But regret, he was learning, had no power to reverse time. One evening, his assistant rushed in, slightly out of breath. Sir, I think we found something. He looked up instantly, a flicker of hope cutting through the exhaustion. Where? There's a global innovation summit happening tomorrow. One of the keynote speakers matches his profile. His heart pounded. What name? The assistant hesitated. He doesn't go by Ethan anymore. A pause. He uses the name E. Stone. The name felt unfamiliar, distant, but something about it made sense. A boy who had been broken, turning himself into stone. Prepare the car, he said immediately. The next day, the massive conference hall buzzed with energy. Professionals, investors, innovators from all over the world filled the seats, their conversations blending into a low hum of anticipation. He sat quietly among them, almost unrecognizable from the man he used to be, no longer commanding attention, no longer surrounded by admiration, just another face in the crowd. Then the lights dimmed, and now, the host announced, the visionary behind some of the most groundbreaking engineering solutions in recent years. E. Stone. Applause erupted. He felt his chest tighten. And then, Ethan walked onto the stage. Confident, calm, strong. Everything he had once been denied the chance to become, now fully realized. For a moment, the man couldn't breathe. That was his son, his real son, and he had thrown him away. Ethan began speaking, his voice steady, his presence commanding. He spoke about resilience, about building from nothing, about the power of persistence when no one believes in you. Every word felt like it carried a hidden weight, a truth that only one man in that room fully understood. By the time the applause faded, his father was already on his feet. He moved quickly through the crowd, ignoring the curious glances, ignoring the voices around him. He had only one focus. Ethan. Backstage, security hesitated for a moment, but his name still carried enough influence to let him through. And then, they stood face to face again. For a second, neither of them spoke. Years of silence pressed into that single moment. Ethan, he said, his voice barely holding together. Ethan looked at him, not surprised, not shocked, as if part of him had always known this day would come. You found me, Ethan said calmly. His father swallowed hard. I've been looking everywhere. Ethan didn't respond. I know the truth now, he continued, his voice shaking. About everything. About you. A pause. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Ethan's expression didn't change. I know, he said quietly. The honesty in that response cut deeper than anger ever could. I did a DNA test, his father rushed on, as if the explanation could somehow lessen the weight of what he had done. Daniel, he's not my son. You are. You've always been. I didn't need a test to know who I was, Ethan interrupted. Silence fell. I was your son the night you threw me out, he continued. Nothing changed that, except your choice. His father's eyes filled with something close to desperation. I was blind. I was proud. I didn't see. You didn't want to see. The correction was calm. Final. I sent them away, his father said quickly. Both of them. They're gone. I have nothing left now. Ethan held his gaze. And you think that gives you something back? The question landed heavily. I thought, maybe we could start again, his father said, his voice cracking. I've lost everything. You're all I have left. For the first time, something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Not anger, not pain, just clarity. You didn't lose everything, Ethan said slowly. You gave it away. The truth settled between them like a weight neither could escape. I was a child, Ethan continued. I stood outside in the rain, begging for you to choose me. Just once. His father's shoulders trembled. You didn't. Silence. And now, you want me to come back because you're alone? The question wasn't cruel. It was honest. And honesty hurt more. I regret it every day, his father whispered. Ethan nodded slightly. I believe you. That small acknowledgement almost felt like hope. But it didn't last. Regret doesn't rebuild what you destroyed, Ethan added. His father's face fell. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quickly. I just want a chance to be in your life. Even a small part. Ethan took a slow breath. For a moment, it seemed like he might say yes. But then he shook his head. No. The word came gently, but it carried the same finality as the door that had once been slammed on him. I learned how to live without you, Ethan said. I learned how to become someone without your approval, without your love. A pause. I'm not going backwards. His father looked like he wanted to argue, to fight, to beg. But there was nothing left to say, because deep down, he knew Ethan was right. A soft voice broke the silence. You've said what you needed to say. They both turned. The maid stood there. The same woman who had once held an umbrella over a broken boy. The same woman who had given him a second chance at life. She looked at Ethan, her expression warm. Are you ready? Ethan nodded. Then he looked back at his father one last time. Not with anger, not with hate, but with distance. I hope you find peace, he said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't cruelty either. It was closure. He turned and walked away. And this time, he didn't stop, didn't hesitate, didn't look back. His father stood there, frozen, watching the only person who truly belonged to him walk out of his life forever. Again. But this time, there was no storm, no slammed door, no one to blame, just silence, and the unbearable weight of knowing. He had destroyed the one thing that mattered most. Back at the mansion, the emptiness felt different now. Not just quiet, but final. He walked slowly through the halls, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Every corner held a memory. Every memory held regret. He stopped in front of Ethan's old room, opened the door, stepped inside. Nothing had changed, except everything. He sat down slowly, staring at the empty space where a boy once stood, waiting to be seen. I was wrong, he whispered. But the room didn't answer. Because some apologies come too late, and some people don't come back. Far away, under a clear sky, Ethan stood outside a building he had built from nothing. The maid stood beside him. You did it, she said softly. He nodded. We did it. She smiled. And this time, he allowed himself to smile back. Not because the past no longer mattered, but because it no longer controlled him. Because some people break you. Some people abandon you. And some people choose you when no one else does. And in the end, those are the ones who truly become your family. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. My question for you, was Ethan right to walk away and never look back? Or should he have forgiven them? And honestly, what would you have done in his place?